Hello and good evening to all. I am very thrilled to be gathered here. I am Tammy Gomez, and I am physically, geographically situated in North Texas, Fort Worth specifically, which is the historical homeland for the Wichita peoples and affiliated tribes. And I'm honored to have some friends and comrades here to share some of your specific ways of showing your commitment to the Black Lives Matter movement, which is currently happening. What's also currently happening is a um, rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma that's probably getting underway by now, and already there's controversy and mayhem up in that city. And I'm sitting where I am sitting. I'm here in a place of hoping that the best outcome will happen for all the peoples who are involved, no matter what sides or places around lines that they stand or choose to stand. I hope there's a minimum of negativity and ruckus. But yeah, I'm just sitting here hoping for some great outcomes to be. Here in this program for an hour, we have a charged energy that I think is full of hope and positivity and commitment for growth and change. You are free to not be on camera if you choose, if you're more comfortable, and that's an option you have. Also, if you feel like you might be noisy, you might want to turn off your mic, but feel free to keep it on as you like, particularly if you're going to present for us. We have a number of folks who have graciously agreed to accept my invitation to present something today. First off, I want to invite Jenny to the mic and the stage to bring us to a place of grounding.
Alrighty. Hey, y'all. Good evening. My name is Jenny. Thank you, Tammy, for having us here. We're going to take a moment to just close our eyes and center ourselves. Let me turn off my dryer. Making a lot of noise. Okay. As we take a moment to just close our eyes and notice the ground. Notice your feet being held by the ground. As we connect to an energy that is from the Pachamama, from Mother Earth. Let nature nurture you. Let nature hold you. We connect to an energy. We feel it coming from the soles of our feet. Take a moment to just drop your shoulders. Notice if you have anything that you may be carrying as non-Black people. Shame, guilt. Just relax your shoulders. Soften your eyebrows. As we take a nice inhale through the nose and out the mouth. To just recalibrate ourselves, center ourselves, drop any thoughts of what this may be leading us to, and just open our hearts and let spirit guide us as we commit ourselves to the ongoing process of unlearning, of being quiet, of learning how to hold space, of dropping anything we may have picked up consciously or unconsciously, any bias, any history that may not be the truth. We remember the charge from Mother Earth as it connects us all for what uncertain times lie ahead for this revolution. We take a breath in through the nose. Exhale out the mouth, dropping your shoulders, moving your neck from side to side, releasing any tension in our body as we open this sacred space for us to gather, learn, share resources, being very intentional of us not asking Black folks to teach us, not asking Black women for free labor, taking the moment to unlearn and share resources within ourselves. As we move our toes and our fingers to just bring us back into this moment. And open your eyes. Thank you.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you. I'm bringing another person in. Okay. Awesome. Thank you, Jenny. Next, I want to introduce to you Adam McKinney, who is African American, and I am asking him to do a little bit of teaching, though I know we have to take on the burden of doing a lot of our own learning. But Adam specifically working on an amazing project that's going to affect our historical perception and perspectives of something that happened here almost 100 years ago. So Adam, I'm going to, or you can unmute your mic and just go for it in the sharing. Thank you for being here. Oh, and please feel free, I could mention you're also a dance professor at TCU here in Fort Worth, but feel free to introduce us to any other titles or tags you'd like us to know about you.
Gracias, Tammy. Thank you, Jennifer, for grounding us. My name is Adam McKinney. I'm also known as Adam Ze'ev Ben Avraham. I'm also known as Eagle Dancer. I'm also known as Murmur. I'm a tall, Black, Native, gay, Jewish man. My hair is pulled back on the sides and in the back, and on the top, spiral curls are unfolding from the top of my head. I'm wearing a black t-shirt, and I'm calling in from Arlington Heights, Fort Worth, Texas. I'm a homeowner with my husband, Daniel, in a historically white-only neighborhood that Black women from Como, just a few miles south from here, used to come and clean and wash. So it's a contradiction that I am here on this earth, and it's a contradiction that I live where I do. As Tammy mentioned, I'm an assistant professor of dance at Texas Christian University. I'm also the co-director of an arts and service organization committed to healing through the arts and dialogue called DNA Works. And I'll share the website in the chat before I have to leave early. I'm also the president of a social justice organization called Tarrant County Coalition for Peace and Justice, which is a nonprofit truth and reconciliation team that designs collaborative education to increase this idea of recollection, recollecting, and remembering histories to promote reflection and encourage the reconsideration of the significance of racial terror violence in US history, specifically here in Fort Worth, Texas. Recently, we led some Juneteenth, that's a little fly on my screen, on my camera. Recently, we led some Juneteenth Day programming for the city of Fort Worth that I'll also share in the chat. One of my interests is how to think about the body as a receptacle for trauma and transgenerational trauma, and dance as a way to heal from both current traumas that we have inherited as a society and those transgenerational pieces. And how can we do that both on personal levels and on community levels as a way to think about what I call the aesthetics of liberation? How do we embody what it means to be liberated? And how can we support communities in doing that? And so one of the ways that I'm thinking about that is in looking back to history, like the Adinkra symbol, the West African Akan symbol called the Sankofa. It's a bird that turns its head to look back, but is moving forward at the same time. So in order to move forward, we also have to look back. And that is through a project called the Fred Rouse Memorial Project. It has several entities, two of which I'll speak about today. The first is Fort Worth Lynching Tour. It's a new arts and technology bike tour that we are taking Fort Worth residents on to the sites associated with the lynching of Fred Rouse that happened here in Fort Worth, Texas on December 11th, 1921, just 6.5 months after the Tulsa riot, which is telling in terms of our Southern narrative and our Southern histories that is quilted inside of the ideology of white supremacy. For example, Fort Worth had the largest KKK membership in the 1920s. So yeah, Fort Worth Lynching Tour is going to premiere in December 2020, and we welcome you to be a part of the project. It's free. We welcome you to come on a bike or walk or drive. We want to make it accessible to all participants. Again, you can go to our website, dnaworks.org. The second component of the Fred Rouse Memorial Project is to transform the former KKK meeting hall here in Fort Worth, Texas, that still stands at 1012 North Main Street, very close to the Tarrant County Courthouse here in Fort Worth. You know, I'm thinking about the recent developments about taking down Confederate statues. And I think it's really important to do that work, right? To reform, to reclaim and reform space. And I'm thinking about what it will mean to transform a particular history that was created to hold up race and terror, and transform it into hope and arts and community. So we plan to reframe that and rename that as the Fred Rouse International Center for the Arts and Community Healing. It will also incorporate lots of other components, including Opal Lee's Juneteenth Day Museum. There's more information. If you go to dnaworks.org, there's more information there. And lastly, I'll just share one YouTube link. It's a video of me dancing the story of Fred Rouse that occurred here in Fort Worth, Texas on December 11th, 1921. It's our job to remember racial terror lynchings, and in that remembering we also get to recover each other in this process of the ways in which we've all been racialized as a way to separate and conquer. And so what will it mean to restructure and reform communities by remembering, by looking back at the ways we've been separated and crying and shaking and laughing and sweating and using the embodied process that we all have access to heal. Again, there's more information at dnaworks.org and tccpj.org. Tarrant County Coalition for Peace and Justice, we welcome your participation. I'll share all those links here in this chat. Thanks for allowing me to do some teaching in this forum. And Tammy, thank you so much for your leadership and your commitment to social justice.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Adam. I know you've got a busy evening, and if you need to move on from this meeting to the next, I understand why.
Thanks, Tammy. I would love to allow chat to be able. Can you make it not disabled in the chat? Thank you again.
Oh, I forgot that step. Sorry about that. Great. And if you have any questions for Adam, you can drop them in the chat for now, and I can make sure that he gets them later on and he can get back to you. We're mutual friends on social media, so y'all can connect with Adam yourself if you like, or I'm happy to forward the questions on to him. And I'll definitely be helping to promote the memorial ride that will happen in December. So I'll definitely be shouting that out. Okay. So next up, I would like to lead us in a call and response exercise. And if you are okay with that, I'd love for you to unmute yourselves. And when I pause, I'm going to read like the beginning of a sentence. And then when I stop, I would like to invite you to say these words. It is my responsibility to learn, study, and listen. Basically, just that sentence. It is my responsibility to learn, study, and listen. And if you like, I can share that on the screen so that becomes even less frenetic or chaotic. Let me do that. About Fred Rouse, who was lynched in 1921 in Fort Worth.
It is my responsibility to learn,
Study, and listen. About other lynchings and racist raids anywhere, past or present.
It is
my responsibility to learn, study, and listen.
About mass incarceration of Black men disproportionately to other populations of people in the U.S.
It is
my responsibility to learn, study, and listen.
About the historical contributions of all Black people, especially the inventions, all the breakthroughs in science and technology and education and some, the political leadership. It is my
responsibility to learn, study, and listen.
About all the political prisoners here in the U.S. who have worked for Black liberation only to find themselves locked up, chained up, manacled, dehumanized, degraded in front of the public, and otherwise kept away from us. It is my
responsibility to learn, study, and listen.
About freedmen communities in our cities where newly freed slaves worked for economic and educational success.
It is my responsibility to learn, study, and listen.
Thank you. Thank you for doing that. Appreciate it. Next, I'm going to invite Jose, who's our resident DJ for the hour, to play that first song. And this is an old classic, which you may be familiar with. And I'm going to ask you if you have a piece of paper to create your own ending to this beginning of a sentence. None of us are free if, and then you fill in the blank. So as you hear the song, which we can start now, Jose, just think about that. None of us are free if something, something. And then you can hold it up to the screen and share. Thank you.
Well, you better listen, my sisters and brothers, because if you do, you can hear their voices still calling across the years. And they're all crying across the ocean, and they're crying across the land, and they will till we all come understand. None of us are free. None of us are free. None of us are free. One of us are chained. None of us are free. And there are people still in darkness, and they just can't see the light. If you don't say it's wrong, then that says it's right. We got to try to feel each other. Let our brothers know that we care. Got to get the message, send it out loud and clear. None of us are free. None of us are free. None of us are free. One of us are chained. None of us are free. It's a simple truth we all need, just to hear and to see. None of us are free. Oh Lord, none of us are free. Now I swear your salvation isn't too hard to find. None of us can find it on our own. We got to join together in spirit, heart, and mind, so that every soul suffering will know that we're not alone. None of us are free. None of us are free, y'all. None of us are free, and none of us are chained. None of us are free. If you just look around you, you're gonna see what I said. Cause the world is getting smaller each passing day. Now it's time to stop making changes, and it's time for us all to realize that the truth is shining bright right before our eyes. None of us are free. None of us are free. None of us are free. One of us is chained. None of us are free. Oh, none of us are free. None of us are free. Well, not one of us. None of us are free. Well, one of us is chained. Well, none of us are free. Well, once again, none of us are free. 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 One of us is chained. None of us are free. One of us. None of us are free. Lord have mercy. None of us are free. Oh, let me say it, y'all. None of us are free. One of us is chained. None of us are free. Well, I gotta None of us are free. One of us is chained. None of us are free. 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 One of us is chained. None of us are free. None of us are free. None of us are free. No. None of us are free. One of us is chained. None of us are free. Oh, Lord. None of us are free. None of us are free. None of us are free. One of us is chained. None of us are free.
Thank you, Jose, for playing the track. And I love this. Just thank you. Thank you for doing this in community together. Now there's another thing we're gonna do in community together. If you'd like to participate, that's great. What I'm gonna do now is pull up some text about the Tulsa Race Massacre that happened in 1921, as Adam just told us, mere months before the lynching of Fred Rouse here in North Texas. Certainly that was a very challenging time to be in the US for multiple reasons. And so given that the elected leader of this country is now on a huge platform in Tulsa, probably not addressing this historical I guess this landmark moment as he stands in Tulsa, I thought that maybe it would be best for us to acknowledge it from our platform here. So I'll bring up the text, and what I'd love to have happen is for each of us to read out loud. If you'll unmute your mics and just take on a paragraph, and I'll scroll through the document. And if it feels like too much, then maybe we won't go through the whole document. You know, we'll just go through, you know, and you can hit me up on the chat if you have suggestions on how to proceed.
My chat is disabled.
Who is that?
Stacy.
Oh, you've been muted?
No, I believe the chat is disabled.
Oh. I don't know why that would be. I mean, I'm really open to it happening. Is it available for you now, Stacy?
No, but that's okay.
Okay, well, I'll. Okay, sorry about that. All right, I'll start with the first paragraph. Or would someone like to start the first paragraph? Someone else who hasn't spoken? Go ahead.
All right, I can start.
Thank you, Tim.
The Tulsa Race Massacre, believed to be the single worst incident of racial violence in American history, the bloody 1921 outbreak in Tulsa has continued to haunt Oklahomans. During the course of 18 terrible hours on May 31st and June 1st, 1921, more than 1,000 homes and businesses were destroyed, while credible estimates of death range from 50 to 300. By the time the violence ended, the city had been placed under martial law. Thousands of Tulsans were being held under armed guard, and the state's second largest African American community had been burned to the ground.
One of a number of similar episodes nationwide, the outbreak occurred during an era of acute racial tensions Characterized by the birth and rapid growth of the so-called Second Ku Klux Klan and by the determined efforts of African Americans to resist attacks upon their communities, particularly in the matter of lynching, such trends were mirrored both statewide and in Tulsa.
By early 1921, Tulsa was a modern city with a population of more than 100,000. Most of the city's 10,000 African American residents lived in the Greenwood district, a vibrant neighborhood that was home to 2 newspapers, several churches, a library branch, and scores of Black-owned businesses.
However, Tulsa was a deeply troubled town. Crime rates were extremely high, and the city had been plagued by vigilism, including the August 20 lynching by a white mob of a white teenager accused of murder. Newspaper reports confirmed that the Tulsa police had done little to protect the lynching victim, who had been taken from his jail cell at the county courthouse.
8 months later, an incident involved Dick Rowland, an African-American shoe shiner, and Sarah Page, a white elevator operator, would set the stage for tragedy. While it is still uncertain as to precisely what happened in the Drexel building on May 30th, 1921, the most common explanation is that Rowland stepped on Page's foot as he entered the elevator, causing her to scream.
The next day, however, the Tulsa Tribune, the city's afternoon daily newspaper, reported that Rowland, who had just been picked up by police, had attempted to rape Page. Moreover, according to eyewitnesses, the Tribune also published a now lost editorial about the incident titled "To Lynch Negro Tonight." By early evening, there was once again lynch talk on the streets of Tulsa.
Talk soon turned to action. By 7:30 p.m., hundreds of whites had gathered outside the Tulsa County Courthouse demanding that the authorities hand over Dick Rowland, but the sheriff refused. At about 9 p.m., after reports of the dire conditions downtown reached Greenwood, a group of approximately 25 armed African-American men, many of them World War I veterans, went down to the courthouse and offered their services to the authorities to help protect Rowland. The sheriff, however, turned them down, and the men returned to Greenwood. Stunned and then enraged, members of the white mob then tried to break into the National Guard armory, but were turned away by a handful of local guardsmen. At about 10 p.m., a false rumor hit Greenwood that whites were storming the courthouse. This time, a second contingent of African-American men, perhaps 75 in number, went back to the courthouse and offered their services to the authorities. Once again, they were turned down. As they were leaving, a white man tried to disarm a black veteran, and a shot was fired. The riot began.
Over the next 6 hours, Tulsa was plunged into chaos as angry whites, frustrated over the failed lynching, began to vent their rage at African Americans in general. Furious fighting erupted along the Frisco Railroad tracks, where black defenders were able to hold off members of the white mob. An unarmed African-American man was murdered inside a downtown movie theater, while carloads of armed whites began making drive-by shootings in black residential neighborhoods. By midnight, fires had been set along the edge of the African-American commercial district. In some of the city's all-night cafes, whites began to organize for a dawn invasion of Greenwood.
During the early hours of the conflict, local authorities did little to stem the growing crisis. Indeed, shortly after the outbreak of gunfire at the courthouse, Tulsa police officers deputized former members of the lynch mob and, according to eyewitnesses, instructed them to get a gun and get in. Local units of the National Guard were mobilized, but they spent most of the night protecting a white neighborhood from a feared but non-existent black counterattack.
Shortly before dawn on June 1st, thousands of armed whites had gathered along the fringes of Greenwood. When daybreak came, they poured into the African American district, looting homes and businesses and setting them on fire. Numerous atrocities occurred, including the murder of A.C. Jackson, a renowned black surgeon who was shot after he surrendered to a group of whites. At least one machine gun was utilized by the invading whites, and some participants have claimed that airplanes were also used in the attack.
Black Tulsans fought hard to protect their homes and businesses, with particularly sharp fighting occurring off Standpipe Hill. In the end, they were simply outgunned and outnumbered. By the time that additional National Guard troops arrived in Tulsa at approximately 9:15 a.m. on the morning of June 1st, most of Greenwood had already been put to the torch.
A brief period of martial law was followed by recriminations and legal maneuvering. Even though Dick Rowland was exonerated, an all-white grand jury blamed Black Tulsans for the lawlessness. Despite overwhelming evidence, no whites were ever sent to prison for the murders and arson that occurred.
The vast majority of Tulsa's African American population had been made homeless by the event. Yet, despite efforts by the white establishment to force the relocation of the Black community, within days of the violence, Black Tulsans had already begun the long and arduous process of rebuilding Greenwood. Thousands, however, were forced to spend the winter of 1921 through 1922 living in tents.
The deep scars left by the tragedy remained visible for years. While Greenwood was eventually rebuilt, many families never truly recovered from the disaster. Moreover, for many years, the violence became something of a taboo subject, particularly in Tulsa. A state commission was formed in 1997 to investigate. The report recommended that reparations be paid to the remaining Black survivors. A team of scientists and historians uncovered evidence supporting long-held beliefs that unidentified victims had been buried in unmarked gravesites.
One of the great tragedies of Oklahoma history, this eruption of bloodshed and destruction in Tulsa has lived on as a potent symbol of the ongoing struggle of Black and white Oklahomans to forge a common destiny out of an often troubled past. Thank you. Thank you for reading. At this point, I would like to just open the floor if anyone has something they'd like to say or share at this moment. Just that was a lot of information to take in. It may have been brand new and unknown to you before now. And if you have any responses or something you'd like to share about this, please speak.
Well, I only recently heard about this through this current movement that's taking place. And I have, like I said, committed myself, like you said, I mean, to learning and understanding this system, this racism that takes place and what we don't know in our society. And this is just one example of something I had no idea about. And I'm a teacher, and I was shocked that I didn't even know about it.
I read, thank you, Stacy. Thank you for sharing that. I just read a headline. I didn't want to read the entire story under it, but that the US president is claiming to have made more people aware of this massacre. So he's, you know, kind of taking ownership of, you know, being an educator, and don't know how he would think to gain from that, or why he would want to position himself as a person that's making this more well known. But perhaps because he's in Tulsa today, a lot of folks will be inspired to do like we are, which is just sharing and exchanging important information and reflecting on our changing perspectives, our growing mindsets about this kind of content and history and information, which is useful, you know. And you're an educator, Stacy, so you know that the students never in trouble if they didn't know when they arrived in the classroom. They're never in trouble for not knowing already. And when they learn and they grow that new mindset or achieve new knowledge, it's something we can all celebrate.
At any age.
At any age, yeah. Mm-hmm. Anyone else want to be on the mic for a moment? Because what I want to do next is offer a poem that I wrote, which I've never shared out loud, and it's pretty heavy and ranty for me. So just want to kind of give like a little bit of a content warning because I'm kind of raging in this piece. It's about 3 minutes, I think. So, and it's just tentatively titled Trash. And I wrote it in response to something I heard on NPR News about a week and a half ago. And this is what I heard on the radio, more or less what was on the radio. During the 11-minute hearing in Hennepin County Court, Judge Janice M. Redding set Derek Chauvin's unconditional bail at $1.25 million or $1 million with conditions. And those conditions include not being able to work in law enforcement or security. Also, he must turn in all personal guns and permits and cannot have contact with the Floyd family in any way. And this is my response to that. Well, yeah, let him try to post bail at 1 million with conditions. Let him be out on the streets with no way to physically and personally protect himself. No guns and no permits, no more. You don't want to be on the streets now. You don't want to be on the streets, trash. You don't want to be on the streets, Chauvin, trash. Ain't no people, my color, any color, want to pick up trash like you off the streets, living or dead. Nobody wants to trash themselves by trusting their hands to be put upon your body, your offensive body, your death-making body, your murder-making body, you on the streets. Ain't no janitor want to touch or pick you up. Pick up that trash. We done picked up all your trash for you in the past. We picked up, we swallowed, we ate it, we drank it, we looked at it, we got stared at by it, by your trash. And now you have nothing but time to sit in there in jail and rewind your life tape. And look at where you went wrong. Oh, where did I go wrong? If I could do it over, if I could just do it over. Well, when would you start doing it over, huh? Murder one rap, huh? 2 weeks ago? You better not be starting there. You better be rolling further back. Rewind to your past, your child past, your teen, adolescent, prepubescent past, your young adult past. Trash. You trash, you be out on the streets, you won't be safe. You be out on the streets, trash, the right people won't be touching and picking you up. No, you'd be trash out on the streets without a funeral, your body all falling apart, decomposing under the hot Texas or Florida or New York or New Jersey or Illinois or North Dakota, South Dakota, Arizona. Hot, brutal sunlight. Broiling that rot right out of you, 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 which you should have done yourself. You had 44 years and you didn't even think about how you full of trash, you trash full of hate, all that inborn hate, that insecurity, that white male rage, that white male insecurity, anxiety, that white male fragility. You didn't have time to dig into your own trash. You didn't have time to dig or make time to dig in your own trash. Well, we ain't picking you up. It ain't my labor. It ain't my physical, emotional labor to fix you up. You fixed yourself up good. Look where you are now. Look where you are now. You got time. Rewind, re-roll that tape back, Mr. Man. Mr. Man, no more in officer enforcement security uniform because you've been demoted, deranked, degraded, demoted, deranked, degraded, and you did it all to yourself. You done messed up good, trash. You done messed up so good, trash. You ain't nothing but trash. Ain't nobody gonna touch you. Ain't no garbage bin or dumpster or landfill gonna make room for your kind of trash. You trash all by your lonely self. You be that lonely trash, kicking down the road. The wind barely wanna move you along into that scurrying field. The tumbleweeds run away from you. They roll in opposite directions to the four winds. But you dying, you rotten, you trash rotting yourself out. You rotted yourself out when you kneeled. You rotted yourself out when you stuck your damn hands in your damn trash pockets. You rotted yourself when you had no thinking heart in your head in that moment, in that space, kneeling like you think you're doing good, Mr. Officer Man with gun belt hand and head man. No, you made nothing but more trash out of your already trashy self. And I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. The minute you were born, you weren't trash. You were not trash. You were lovely and beautiful. You had a future. You could have lived a greater life and made such a better piece of person out of yourself. But now it's way too late. You've rolled into some horrible deathbed of pain and darkness, and you're gonna lie there all by your lonely self. You lonely, despicable piece of trash. You done trashed up good. You done trashed up so permanently good. How does that feel, man? Makes you just want to burn, huh? Makes you just wish you could be incinerated right now, huh? Well, don't worry, man, because we're burning it all down now. And he's set to go before the judge for the next hearing in 9 days on June 29th. So next I'd like to invite Tim and Stacy to speak a little bit on the idea of making commitment for change and commitment for growth and possibility and to support the movement for Black lives. So Tim, if you could unmute your mic and go for it.
Sure. So something that I've wanted to be intentional about is I find in myself as a white guy who grew up also very religious and sort of guilt-ridden to want to work toward my own personal absolution and innocence rather than liberation and struggle together. So I wrote a reflection about that. I was baptized 3 times in the same church, and each time in that sanctuary with an American flag next to the cross and police officers directing traffic outside, I was declared innocent before the congregation. And this innocence, this purity was apparently accomplished by a Palestinian Jew occupied and murdered by the Roman Empire, only to become the face of that empire and the face of other empires who occupied and murdered countless people until he became the dominant religion in this empire where my church existed, where I emerged from the baptismal water, forgiven, absolved, saved, innocent. It was in this church that I heard the story of the prophet Jonah, the man who was told by God to go to Nineveh but ran instead, who was chased by God and swallowed by a fish, who finally went to Nineveh, preached to them, watched them repent, watched God spare them, who was so angry he wanted to die when God spared them, who finally tells God how angry he is, whose God gaslights him when he rages against the divine for declaring this evil city innocent, who knew better than to trust the spectacle of repentance the city displayed, this city which was the capital of Assyria, the empire which destroyed Jonah's homeland long before his story was ever written. James Baldwin, in The Spirit of Jonah, writes in a letter to his nephew, "It is not permissible that the authors of devastation should also be innocent. It is the innocence which constitutes the crime." We don't find ourselves in the midst of problems to be solved by our piety or rationality. To be born in the empire that is the United States is to be an inheritor of catastrophes. And when the veil is lifted, as it is now, from the catastrophe that is this nation, there is an impulse among white people especially, or at least this white person speaking to you, to seek out absolution, to try to attain a long-lost purity, to rewrite history again, to present myself as clean, to read and protest and post all so that I might once again be declared innocent of the suffering by those occupied and tortured and murdered by this empire. But if I've learned anything, it's that this moment, at this time, we're not being presented with the question of innocence, but rather with that of involvement in a struggle that cannot be baptized, for it is too wild, too awkward, too filled with shame and violence and beauty and love and rage and blood and laughter and chants and poems and anthems and breath that cannot be held long enough to be submerged in the purifying waters of the American empire. The struggle for Black liberation and all liberation existed before us and will continue long after us. And to be involved is to forsake innocence for the sake of freedom.
Tammy, you're muted.
Y'all didn't understand what I was saying. Yeah, this is like the international symbol for halo. I love that the disruption, the interruption or the redefining of that, that moment where we could stop thinking that we deserve the halo, that we are innocent, or to try to reclaim a status of innocence. Thank you, Tim. So, Stacy, I wanted to ask if you could share about your commitment to the movement for Black Lives in terms of the project that you've launched and the Facebook page. And I think it's exciting, and there are a lot of initiatives popping up, and I'm just, go ahead and share about yours.
Okay, well, thank you so much for inviting me today. I appreciate you being here, and this is a really cool forum. My words are not as eloquent as Tim's. I just wanted to share this group that I started. I wasn't even going to do a Facebook group. What I was doing is, like all of us, I was outraged after George Floyd was murdered, and I found myself very isolated at home through the pandemic and not teaching. And I thought, what could I do? And the only thing I could do is commit myself to making a difference in the world from my inner circle and try to work it out. So I thought I would challenge my friends, my close friends, to do things to help fight racism. And as a middle-aged white woman, most of my friends are middle-aged white women, and they don't do a lot of social activities. So I thought, I'm going to challenge them to do some things. So I did. I challenged them to do 10 things to fight racism. And that meant right now. Well, as this happened, some of my friends were like, you should start a Facebook group. So I did. And I had about 40 people in there. And I thought, wow, I don't know if I can handle this. Well, now we have 500. And so it's called 10 for Change. And it's what the premise is you challenge 10 people to do 10 things to fight racism. It's as simple as that, systemic racism in our society. And so through that, we did a meetup at a local Black-owned business called Black Coffee. You probably have heard of it. It's in Fort Worth. And we had several people come out, and we had real honest discussions with African-American people, which I didn't even know, and they said call us Black people. I mean, it's just those little things that we're learning as white people. And I really appreciate Jennifer when she was centering us and grounding us, saying, let go of the shame that you have, because I have a tremendous amount of shame. And I appreciated that so much, because that's part of this whole initiative. So in the 10 for Change, I would love for you guys to join it. It's a Facebook group. You don't have to do anything. You just show up, and it's people educating other people so far in a very loving, kind way. And so I thought of this idea to we're going to have meetups at local Black-owned businesses. And so I thought, what else can I do to help? So after the protests, see, there I go. After the protests in Dallas, I went around and took some pictures. I had a man go with me, and we photographed some of the graffiti that was around Dallas, which was quite beautiful. And this is one of the pictures I took. I don't know if you guys saw that in Dallas. And at the bottom here, it has George Floyd's actual words. And there's other ones that say everything hurts, but I made this postcard, and on the back, it has the 10 for Change challenge with the 10 for Change logo right there. And I'm selling them for 10 for $10 for people to mail these out. I'm giving all the money to local Black-owned businesses. I also have stacks of these that I printed myself that I'm going to give to local Black-owned businesses for them to sell and just keep all the money for it. So that's just something I thought that I could do. Some things that members of our group started was a book. We started a book club. And so, you know, a bunch of white people wanted to do better. This is our first book. July 15th is our book discussion. I have somebody leading that. We have invited police officers to come talk to us, and they did. And that was really helpful. And it's great to hear their perspective, and they're on the side of Black Lives Matters, and they want to help support. Also, if you'd like to join, this is the, what it looks like. Group. And so I'd love for you to join, and then you tell other people. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you all. Thank you.
So another friend who's just joined us here is Mercedes, and Mercedes has taken it. Thank you, Stacy, so much for that and for your initiative. And definitely, you know, your growing presence in your community is an example for all of us, like how we have a lot more influence among the family and friends. And sometimes that's when they say, think globally, act locally. Your locally is, you know, are your cousins, your primas, primos, your parents even, or, you know, people you work with, workmates, and your peers in other spaces, and socially, of course. Mercedes, glad you're here, welcome. You've created a button, and it's a way to encourage people to vote. And I'm gonna just show a quick glimpse of it, and let's see if I can get to it. Yeah. And this is with a nod to, is it Zach De La Rocha from Rage Against the Machine, right?
Awesome.
Yeah, so Mercedes has started making these buttons in order to encourage people to vote in the upcoming elections. We have an important vote coming up in just a matter of weeks here in Fort Worth. And we're very invested as activists, the activist community here in North Texas, to try to see that the Fort Worth Police Department gets demilitarized. So I'm gonna pull up an image if I can get to, yeah, this is a quick, we'll give you a quick glimpse of this flyer. Our municipal election is on Tuesday, July 14th. Hopefully you're registered to vote by now. And that's important that folks consider voting against Proposition A. So the language on the ballot is gonna be for or against, not yes or no. So just kind of plug that in your mind that we're voting against Proposition A, which just pushes city leaders to redirect funding that was formerly going to or committed to the CCPD fund to other departments that serve the people. So we could argue that or talk about that, but let's do that on another channel in the interest of time. So lastly, I want to invite Jose to play us out with the last song. Thank you, Mercedes, for being here. And you didn't want to speak, did you? Or do you? No, okay, you're cool. Yeah, you'd said that you weren't into speaking, but yeah, I'm glad you're doing the buttons, and the buttons are giveaways. You're giving some of them away, but if people want a larger quantity, then you might ask for some donations to help with supply, the expense of supplies. So thank you for doing that. You're based in West Fort Worth, so you're a compa. You're here in the community where I'm grounded now. Jose, we got one last song to play. Thank you for being DJ for this hour, and yeah, thank you. Hey, Donna. And the song is by Janelle Monáe, and I'm going to encourage us to move in our bodies because there's a lot quaking and shaking. In my mind, I know I'm feeling a lot of different things from what I've heard and what I've seen you present today. I'm very thankful for all of it, especially all the new content that you created just for this hour. I'm just very can I say indebted to you. I owe you a favor, or may it come back to you threefold. But for this moment in playing us out with the Janelle Monáe song, feel free to move, get up out of your seat, and let's just see each other in our full body rhythm, our spectacular ways of being self in progressive, progressive mind and beautiful body, right? So thank you, Jose. Thank you to all who've been here, and that's my goodbye. If anybody has any shout outs to make, go ahead. Otherwise, I'm ready to move.
Say his name. What's Scott? Say his name. What's Scott? Say his name. What's Scott? What's you say his name? Jermaine Reed. Say his name. Jermaine Reed. Say his name. Reed. Say his name. Jermaine Reed. What's you say his name? Little boy. What? Say his name. Wait, what's you say his name? Say his name. 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 Eric Barber, 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 won't you say his name? Say my boy, say his name. Say my boy, say his name. Say my boy, say his name. Say my boy, won't you say his name? Sean Bell, say his name. Sean Bell, say his name. Sean Bell, say his name. Sean Bell, won't you say his name? Say his name. 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 Won't you say his name?